ODM rebel MPs talk tough, promising not to sever ties with the President Ruto, despite NEC decision to expel them from the party.
Education Ministry now extends deadline for scholarship and loan applications for students joining universities this year. You now have one more month starting today.
And across the borders, Nigeria's appeal court rejects challenges to Bola Tinubu's victory in February's presidential election, saying the petitions by his two main challengers were without merit.
Well, good morning. It is the 7th of September 2023. It's going to be a warm day here in Nairobi. Highs of 26 degrees Celsius and lows of 16 degrees Celsius. Mostly cloudy in Nairobi. How hot is the coffee where you are? This is the Morning Cafe. My name is Freddie Ndimuli.
I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyerungita. Speaking of hot, yesterday night it was quite hot. I don't know what was going on, but then today's proverb is, no one can pass between the thighs of an elephant twice. No one can pass between the thighs of an elephant twice. Think about that this particular morning. This particular morning, around 8 a.m., we'll be discussing matters postpartum hemorrhage and also teen pregnancies. Stick around for that conversation with Dr. Angela Anzenze. Now to the big story this morning.
To the top story now, Kisumu Senator Tom Ojienda says he has no apology to make following the ODM party decision to expel him and 4 others from the party. Ojienda says he'll continue working with President William Ruto, which was the main reason for his expulsion. The ODM National Executive Council gave the green light to expel 5 rebel MPs from the party yesterday for advancing the interests of rival outfits. The 5 leaders are GEM MP Elisha Ochieng Odhiambo, Karoli Omondi Suba South, Gideon Ochanda Bondo, Felix Odiwuor Kode Langata, and Kisumu Senator Tom Ojienda. Now, a section of leaders, mainly affiliated to the Kenya Kwanza coalition, have criticized the decision by ODM. This leads us to our question this morning. Do you support the move by ODM to expel MPs who have gone against the party's stand? Do you support the move by ODM to expel MPs who have gone against the party's stand? You can share your feedback at TV47 News on X and TV47 Kenya on Facebook. We'll be sure to sample some of your views as we go on with this broadcast. For now, let's get the day's diary with Stanley before we take a look at the dailies.
Right, a quick look at what is expected today morning, the 7th day of September. This particular morning in Trans Nzoia County, we expect the Cabinet Secretary of the Ministry of Industries and Trade, Moses Kuria, to preside over the launch of the County Aggregation and Industrial Park, the CAIP, in Trans Nzoia County, while alongside the county boss, that is George Natembeya, that is in Trans Nzoia County. Now let's focus in matters politics, what actually happened yesterday. Now this is what is expected either today or in the course of the end of this week. ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna is expected to commence the removal of the ousted ODM MPs from the party register. We do expect Sifuna to write to the office of the political parties registrar to actually officiate their ouster. This even as MP Felix Odiwuor alias Jolango has insisted he will appeal for his position in the party. And again, this forms our big story and question of the day this morning. Now to matters graft. EACC is expected to release 2 million Kenyan shillings cash and other devices or documents confiscated from former Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya following a court order. In an application before the court, Oparanya is saying the EACC sleuths seized and carried away documents, computers, mobile phones and 2 million Kenyan shillings in cash. At around 2:30 p.m. today, we expect the case to be mentioned to confirm the status of the matter. Now in matters sports, all the way in Qatar, Harambee Stars will be facing Qatar at 6:30 p.m. today, local time, at the Al Janoub Stadium. In what the head coach Engin Firat says will be a measure of the team's preparedness ahead of the World Cup qualifiers. And from Qatar to Brazil, today is Brazil National Day, the Independence Day. They're marking the 201st anniversary. This even as President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has promised to set aside the bad blood and mutual suspicion with the military. That is all for the diary this morning. But then we always have to give you a highlight of today in history. So today in history, back in 1992, a day like today, soldiers fire indiscriminately into the African National Congress ANC demonstrators on the border of Ciskei, that is in South Africa, killing 24 and injuring 150 more. The demonstration had attracted 50,000 people. And from South Africa to the United States of America, back in 1996, the controversial rapper Tupac Shakur, who had been involved with gang violence between rival gangs and had spent time in prison, was shot on the Las Vegas Strip. He died 6 days later at age 25. Most definitely rest in peace, Tupac. Fred, what's your favorite Tupac song, by the way?
I'm not a hip-hop head, so that's a rather tough question. Should ask me something else, probably, about music, but I'll do my research. Ask me this question tomorrow, I'll give you a proper answer.
Tomorrow is Miondoko Day, so definitely, I'll write somewhere.
I remember he sang a song about Dear Mama, something.
Oh, yeah.
I think that one.
Oh, yes. And today's dailies still on matters, the big Nairobi Declaration that is here.
Yes, that's a big story today, and we kick off with the Daily Nation. What Africa Wants, Africa Climate Summit 2023. The Nairobi Declaration, after 3 days of intense discussions, the inaugural African Climate Summit has taken a huge leap of faith and is now seeking to assert the continent's strong voice in the resolution of global climate challenges to which it contributes the least. And led by President William Ruto, the African leaders were crystal clear on their demands to the West. And this continues to be the biggest story this week, and it's been covered on the Daily Nation from page 2 all the way to page 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And yes, the Nairobi Declaration is going to be the biggest talking point. Remember, it is still the Africa Climate Week up until the end of this week. The other big story, and it's covered on the top strip, the ODM party rebels pay hefty price as Raila cracks the whip. And this is also our top story today, and also leading to our question. A legal battle is brewing within ODM after 5 rebel legislators were expelled for violating the party's constitution by going against its resolutions and associating with the ruling Kenya Kwanza alliance. The move to tame the rebels follows a National Executive Committee meeting, NEC, chaired by the party leader Raila Odinga. It lists those affected, Professor Tom Ojienda, Karoli Omondi, Felix Odiwuor, Gideon Ochanda, Elisha Odhiambo, and Esther Passaris, who was fined 250,000 shillings for supporting the finance bill. Other stories are featuring on the front page: Varsity funding, CS extends deadline for loan applications. Students joining universities and technical and vocational education institutions now have until October 7th to submit their applications after the Education CS Ezekiel Machogu extended the deadline by a month. 30 days from today. Those are the big stories featuring on the front page of the Daily Nation. And on the back page, yes, that big story on the CS extending varsity funding application. This has been a very big talking point because students across the country are supposed to start reporting to various universities starting next week. And yes, that's the Daily Nation for you this Thursday morning.
Right, now on the Standard, still on matters climate change, 3.9 trillion Kenyan shillings on the table for climate work. President William Ruto managed to get pledges worth $26 billion during the Africa Climate Summit with a promise to push for financing deal from multilateral lenders and have big polluters pay fair share for crisis. That story is extensive from page 2 all the way to page 7. So the Standard highlights some key highlights, including the Nairobi Declaration, a comprehensive document outlining Africa's climate aspirations, lays out a roadmap for climate-positive growth and global decarbonization while demanding accountability from the international community. They highlighted the staggering reality that over $2 trillion flowed from the global south to the global north every year. This financial drain, they said, needed to be reversed. And also African leaders united to demand climate justice, holding rich nations accountable for their commitments and setting an ambitious agenda for greener, more equitable future. I was actually taking a look at the cartoon inside the Standard. It actually mirrors what is on the front page, and just a bit of it matters climate change, but we'll get to that in a few. And the heads of state agree that leaders on the continent are determined to hold the global community accountable for its role in addressing climate-related damages. Again, you can read that from page 2 all the way to page 7. On the bottom strip of the Standard this morning, Raila's fury with ODM ripples. Raila Odinga's ODM made good its threat to punish members who are pushing President William Ruto's agenda or going against party decisions. 5 members expelled and 3 fined. They have the photos there of some of these MPs, Jem MP, Othiambo, Lang'at MP, Odiwuor, Rongo MP, Paul, and also Suba South MP Karoli Omondi. On the top strip of the Standard matters the wheels of justice there. A comment by the Chief Justice Koome, judicial independence under attack. Remember, she was in Mombasa yesterday where she said that. If you like more details on that, get it on page 8. And in matters education, page 9, you have 30 more days to apply for university funding. Well, that is on the front page of the Standard this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at what's headlining on the People Daily today. Africa's demands on climate change, and that's a big headline on the front page of the People Daily. Take action now. Heads of state adopt radical raft of key demands they want global community to fulfill in quest to stop destruction of habitats, reduce poverty and grow wealth equitably. They've also given quite some extensive coverage on the inside pages of the People Daily on pages 4, 5, 6, 7 and 12. On the Nairobi Declaration, a quote there, this declaration will serve as a basis for Africa's common position in the global climate change process to COP27 and beyond. So yes, the Africa Climate Summit.
COP28 actually.
Yes, the Africa Climate Summit still making it to the front page of the People Daily. Other highlights are on the top strip of the People Daily. And we begin with what's on the very top, almost a scroll-like. ODM expels 5 legislators for working with rival party. The story is on page 2 of the People Daily. The other highlights: students get more time to apply for university loans. Ministry of Education extends deadline for freshers to seek HELB funding by a month. And on the international scene, win for Tinubu after tribunal rejects appeal. And that's the front page of the People Daily today.
You can see the Star also goes with the inset. A photo of the Nairobi Declaration, quite big there. But I feel like the Star this morning focuses on matters politics and what was happening in the ODM beat, and goes with Raila kicks out Ruto allies in radical purge. So 3 MPs fined between 250,000 Kenyan shillings and 1 million, compelled to apologize. And the Star goes with house cleaning and mentions the MPs there, Jalango, Jenda, Elisha, and Kajoli and Ochanda expelled from ODM. So far we've heard from Jalango on his X page, and also Ojenda also commented. We yet to hear from the others and how this the expulsion will be playing out. But away from that, on the bottom strip of, actually before we get into the bottom strip, on the top strip of the Star, an interesting story there. It was matters in the courts yesterday. Ex-Mama Lucy hospital worker found guilty of child trafficking. And at the bottom strip there, Employment Authority on the spot for failing to rein in on drug agencies. That story is on page 7. And on page 2, 51 people disappeared or killed by cops in 6 months, says lobby. That is from January all the way to June. That is on the Star this morning.
Okay, tuende kwenye masuala kwenye jarida la Taifa Leo. Gazeti la Taifa Leo, habari kuu pale ni Raila aangusha shoka, ODM yatimua wabunge kadhaa kutoka kwa chama, wengine wakitozwa faini kwa uasi. Adhabu hii, Baraza Kuu la Kitaifa la ODM limependekeza kutimuliwa kwa wabunge Elisha Omondi wa GEM, Karoli Omondi, mbunge wa Bondo, Gideon Ochanda, Ojenda na Felix Odiwuor Kothe maarufu kama Jalango kuhusiana na usuhuba wao na Rais William Ruto. Wabunge Mark Nyamita wa Uriri na Paul Abuor wa Rongo waliponea kuonyeshwa mlango, lakini wakatozwa faini ya shilingi milioni 1 kila mmoja baada ya kuhojiwa kwenye kikao kuhusu uhusiano wao na Rais Ruto. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili wa gazeti la Taifa Leo. Pale juu kwenye Taifa Leo, ukurasa wa mbele, mambo ya Africa Climate Summit. Timizeni ahadi zenu, viongozi wa Afrika waambia nchi tajiri. Bara launga azimio la Nairobi la kutaka nchi za magharibi kuhakikisha kuna haki na usawa katika ufidiaji wa nchi maskini. Habari zingine ambazo zimepewa kipaumbele kwa kuwekwa kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Masuala ya elimu, Machogu awaokoa wanavyuo, waziri aongeza muda wa wanafunzi kutuma maombi kupata ufadhili wa elimu ya juu. Habari kamili iko kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Kwenye masuala ya sukari na ukulima wa sukari, wapinga Chemelil Muhoroni Sugar kuunganishwa. Pendekezo la kuunganisha viwanda vya sukari vya Chemelil na Muhoroni limeibua hisia mseto katika kaunti. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 5. Na kabla tuondoke kwenye Taifa Leo, mkewe Biden aambukizwa corona. Jill Biden mwenye miaka 72 ambaye amepewa chanjo dhidi ya ugonjwa huo ataendelea kukaa nyumbani kwake jimbo la Delaware. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 8 wa gazeti la Taifa Leo.
I thought corona had...
Well, every day you learn. Every day you learn.
Right, and actually speaking of every day that you're learning, Business Daily is giving us a breakdown of the climate action financing. Yesterday, the Standard had highlighted what to expect and the money trickling in Kenya, consequentially after the Africa Climate Summit. Now, it gives you the Africa Climate Summit deal book, and it mentions a number of players there. Just to take a look, UAE, United Arab Emirates, which will actually play host to the COP28, $450 million and UK projects 49 million euros, and Germany Germany to Kenya 60 million euros, and okay, you can take a look at all of that just to mention but a few, and well, all this actually sums up to quite a huge deal. So it gives you the inside multi-billion-dollar deals at Nairobi Climate Summit. 23 billion unlocked for Africa's green growth agenda to amount a small fraction of at least $160 billion needed by 2030. Other stories making it to the Business Daily this morning on the bottom strip of a Business Daily. Bank cut old giants launch in stockbrokers' profit race. And on the right side of Business Daily, businesses cut selling on credit on surging defaults. Horticulture earnings rebound on stronger euro. And also Centum unit taps 2.9 billion Kenyan shillings IFC loan for affordable homes. Oh yes, I believe that's all on the Kenyan scene. Now cross over to, do you have Daily Monitor?
Let's cross over to Uganda. And in Uganda, we have the Daily Monitor. The front page of the Daily Monitor goes with NDA looked away as AIDS drug was fed to animals. The National Drug Authority, NDA, this is in Uganda, whose core mandate is to ensure medicines and medical supplies in the country are safe and used to save lives, said it was aware but kept quiet on abuse of antiretroviral drugs by farmers to treat and fatten poultry and pigs in order not to alarm the public or hurt the economy. Wow, very interesting what's headlining in Uganda.
Oh yes.
AIDS drugs being fed to animals to fatten them. Another story there on the economy, Museveni woos South African investors. That's on the bottom there of the front page of the Daily Monitor. On the top strip, Bobby Wine asks Biden and EU to defund Uganda. That's the opposition leader there asking the West to defund Uganda. And that's as far as what's headlining in Uganda. Tuvuke boda tuelekee kule Bongo.
Kule Bongo pale katika Tanzania. Mwananchi, dawa mpya, VVU gumzo. And Mwananchi yadokeza kwa matumaini mapya ya tiba ya ukimwi yameanza kushika kasi baada ya wanasayansi wa Denmark na Australia kutengeneza vidonge vya kuifikia kuchunguza seli muhimu iliyoshindwa kufikiwa kwa zaidi ya miaka 40. Sasa yapeana takwimu pale 1.7 milioni. Hii ni idadi ya watu wanaoishi na virusi vya ukimwi nchini Tanzania hadi kufikia Novemba mwaka 2021 kwa mujibu wa TACAIDS. Mbali na hayo ni kuwa wawekezaji wanavyokwepa kodi nyeti kwa nchi za Afrika. Mwananchi adokeza kuwa mbinu zinazotumika za bainika. Kampuni tanzu zatajwa kuhusika kwenye mchezo huo. Sekta za madini, mafuta na gesi vinara. TRA yashituka yaokoa shilingi trilioni 1.2. Kwingineko ni kwa marais kutoa hatima ya uhakika wa chakula. Rais Samia Suluhu Hassan leo ataongoza marais wenzake kutoka mataifa 7 ya Afrika kwenye mkutano wa kimataifa wa jukwaa la mifumo ya usalama wa chakula huku. Right, and that also forms today's diary. Expected to see how that will be going. Also inside they do have a photo of
it's interesting.
Ruto.
Yes, it's interesting to see that matters AIDS, HIV-related news is headlining in Tanzania and Uganda
also,
at the same time. No mention of that in Kenya, but something that will definitely be would relate to what's happening in Kenya. And this is on the Citizen, still in Tanzania, on the front page, East Africa facing harsh fuel reality. The continued trend of skyrocketing fuel prices across the region is taking a heavy toll on businesses, with motorists feeling the pinch as a dark cloud hovers over the economies of East African countries. This is definitely something that will affect us. And the good thing is that on the Citizen, despite the fact that it's a Tanzanian newspaper, talks about the region.
Oh, yes.
Because even the other story, Dar Mombasa gas pipeline project shows signs of life. And that's a story on page 3 of the Citizen. They're talking about that. Even another highlight here, still linked to what's happening in Kenya. 7 African presidents to discuss food supply at AGRF. The story is on page 4, and as Stanley said, it features on our diary as well. And that is as far as the dailies are concerned on the front pages. Sasa tuangalia maswala ya karakacha.
And as promised, on page 14 of the Standard, it mirrors what is happening on the climate change. And actually, speaking on matters climate change, financing gives you a number of the climate change effects, from fires to drought to hurricanes and whirlwinds and floods. And the skeletons there of voices. Someone saying we need to invest more in climate solutions.
A little too late, don't you think?
Oh, yes.
That it's the skeletons that are asking for more investment.
Oh, yes.
In climate solutions.
Oh, yes.
Interesting. On the cartoon on the Daily Nation today, also on page 15 of the Daily Nation, it shows hands at the bottom strip there, seemingly trying to reach to the top of a pillar there that has books and a university degree. What do you call it? That hat.
The graduation hat.
Yes, meaning or rather symbolizing that degree or university education could be out of reach of many Kenyans or Kenyan youth at the moment. And this has a lot to do with the funding model. And even about it's been captured on the front pages of our dailies today. The fact that the Education Ministry has actually extended their deadline to apply for scholarships and loans as well. He
says you have 30 more days, but it's going to be interesting to see now for the 30 days is the number of students who are actually going to apply for this particular funding, university funding. Is it going to increase?
At least the last I checked, we are beyond the 50% mark. At least more people are now applying. Initially, the uptake was very slow. And without this funding, you literally cannot afford, a huge population cannot afford to pay for university. So either way, most of those people who have gained admittance to universities and other institutions of higher learning will need this government funding, and they have to apply for it. It doesn't come automatically. Previously, it was just a direct government subsidy. Right now, you have to apply for it. If not, you pay from out of your pocket. So we just do hope that this will help a lot of the young people who are eager to join universities.
Actually, speaking of hoping that it will help young Kenyans, there's an interesting read just below the caricature on page 15. Yams, fish and mud African EPL fans. I think it was yesterday, we were seeing an interesting story of a Man United fan who was rushed to hospital after eating 15 boiled eggs, after the Sunday game.
It is a sad reality because even watching football or taking part in such sporting activities should be something that uplifts your spirit, not sends you the other way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There's right now an international break, so hopefully, Man United fans included, just relax. Use this time to clear your head until the break is over.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Now that the Africa Climate Summit came to an end yesterday, today we want to know what happens next. And after the break, we'll be having in studio public policy analyst Maliba Arnold, Honorable Sunday Oyolo, the UDA Kenya Kwanza Western Region Coordinator, and political analyst Eric Regalo. So do stand by for that discussion. But remember our question today. Yes, do you support the move by ODM party to expel MPs who have gone against the party's stand? Continue giving us your feedback to that question at TV47 News on X and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. We just about take a break, but you're watching Morning Cafe. Don't go too far. Africa Climate Summit came to an end at the KICC. It is time to take stock of what happened and see what happens next, what happens from here, even as we await the COP28 that will be taking place in Dubai. In studio currently we have Maliba Arnold Nyanjai, public policy analyst. Good morning, Arnold. Karibu sana.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yes, this whole week from Monday up until yesterday, we were discussing issues to do with the Africa Climate Summit. We dwelt largely on the level of awareness and understanding of the discussions that were going on at that level. Yeah. But I'm aware that you were part of those attending the summit. How was the feeling there?
Well, for me, not really a new experience. Mm-hmm. I have been in such spaces before, even though I found a little bit our organization. And now that the visitors are gone, it's always important to actually, when the visitors are around, you can put up the best act. We did well to put up a show. We quite did a good hosting. But then, of course, at organizational level, I think we should have done much better, especially for the local delegates. That is one thing we can actually not look away from, because if we really have to pull our weight together, I know after you have succeeded, a lot of times we do not want to talk about the low side of things. I think whereas the ministry, the Environment Ministry, and of course MFA taking lead, did quite a good job, and the presidency and the executive quite put in a show, we did well, but I know that out there, a lot of delegates are not happy, especially local ones. For people who came from outside the country, somehow there was that grace period, or rather at least a little bit of grace on how then they would be handled. A lot of people got their invitations, and then their budgets could not be found too much. And then, of course, the organizers had very little to say about it, close to nothing. They were almost on a prescription, nail by mouth. You go around asking about your badge and everything else. You've got an invitation and everything else. I think to that effect, later on they should just apologize, because we were the hosts. We are the people.
But at least we handled our guests well.
Yes, for our guests. Still a number of them, of course, came in and they had problems. But at least onboarding guests, we did well. But literally, you know, the way you treat your children should be the way you treat your guests. So on the local front, I think we didn't treat our delegates very well. Our local delegates weren't treated so well. A lot of them had invitations and everything else prepared. You look at the youth event, for example, the attendance wasn't as big as it should have been. A lot of side events were actually cancelled without explanation last minute, smaller ones. So those are issues that we need to go back and then do a post-mortem on it, and then ensure that the next time we actually accept. You know, this happened here because the president requested and actually volunteered to host. Even as the president tries to open the world, or rather Kenya to the world, we literally are doing away with all visas and everything else. Requirement for everyone, because like the president ably said, it's one of those things that we've always known, but we've never taken it seriously, that the oldest human remains are in Kenya. Okay. And that the Out of Africa theory on evolution says that we became human beings here in Kenya. Okay. And then, of course, moved to the rest of the world.
And as you mentioned, the president, he was definitely the star of the show. He appears to have really used that space to endear himself to the world, especially on this issue of climate change and climate action.
Well, the president has been doing very well on that particular front. You remember in Paris, when he was in Paris, he actually, literally people were asking, who is this? He is not the typical face that will be doing such like a campaign, especially in Paris, and everybody was looking forward to come here. And I think it's also the benefit of how variety can actually like shape. This is the beauty of elections, that we bring in variety. Now we have got a very different strand of a president, a leader of a nation who is not the traditional way we look at it. Of course, locally we have got the way we organize our politics, and he might not be so different. But to the world, he doesn't really look like the Kenyan president, or rather the African president they've actually done. So it's a sector he understands well. It's something that is closer to him. And I think he's done it justice, both locally and internationally. Almost as it is now, Kenya looks like we are the leader, even though he's already riding on what we've done in the past. Like in Africa, we've done very well on green energy. Look at the geothermal wells that we have. the wind farms that we have, the solar farms that we've put up. Kenya has been doing very well on that particular front. So he's riding on what we already have actually been doing and leapfrogging the country, putting it at the front seat.
Okay.
Yeah.
And going back to, before we even talk about the nitty-gritties of the summit and the Nairobi Declaration, economically, for the 3 days that those guests have been here, 30,000 delegates spending their nights across 58 hotels, 10, 15, 16, 19 heads of states and government. Definitely some Kenyans are laughing all the way to the bank. Definitely,
a lot of people are smiling to the bank. And I also think that the little problem with the dollars, we've harvested sufficient foreign currencies to actually keep us a little bit afloat for a while. So business-wise, I think that is also good. Kenya and Nairobi specifically has been the MICE headquarters of this particular region. The meetings, the conferences and everything else in the region. I know Rwanda has been trying to actually compete us, but you see, you cannot compare Rwanda to Kenya because we have got like 5 climatic regions. We have got a population of about 55 million people. Rwanda is almost the size of Kakamega. The variety and everything else, you know, from Western where you have got the tropical weather all the way to the coast. Then in the north, there's so much variety around here. And then Nairobi still remains quite strategic in the region. So I think this also tries to push back Nairobi to where it's supposed to be, as the regional MICE headquarters, where meetings should be happening. Literally, if anyone wants to do, we even host the only UN agency, the headquarters. Outside of Europe and America, the only one. Outside of those two, actually in the north, we are the only people with that particular facility. So that in and of itself, that's why I'm actually saying that we need to up our game. The president is moving so fast, and I think a lot of people who are working with him are not able to catch up. And it will be so bad that the leader of the nation is making much more progress. He's faster than the people he's actually hired to work with him. So when ordinarily they should actually be ahead of him so that he does catch up, because he's got quite a bigger file to deal with.
And yes, for the first time in a very long time, we got some good applause from some of the delegates, because I saw someone on Twitter, and this was a delegate from Uganda, just commending how clean and well organized Nairobi city looks. This is something that we as Kenyans are not used to. And even as Kenyans and dwellers in the city dwellers get their life back to normal, all the parking spaces going back and the roads reopening. It's curious that one of the international journalists, Larry Madowo, said that he has not seen, in all his years as a journalist, he has not seen KICC looking so good. And I didn't get an opportunity to go there, but just how good was it looking?
Well, KICC is a masterpiece that we've had. Is actually, you know, KICC is underappreciated. And when you put up an act, a venue is just as good as the act you put in. KICC, of course, remains one of the biggest or the key dominoes when you are looking at the Nairobi skyline. Literally, you cannot have the Nairobi skyline without KICC in it. It still remains quite key and central to how Nairobi is designed. Actually, it's actually almost, I know the ground zero in Nairobi is closer to GPO, that was the point zero in Nairobi. But then the real point zero is actually what we call Government Square. That is Parliament Road, Taifa Road, City Hallway and Parliament, and Harambee Avenue. That is Harambee Avenue, Parliament Road, City Hallway, and then Taifa Road. That is Government Square. And KICC sits right at the center of that. Of course, we put in quite good work. And you know, the colors of our, you might actually forgive Larry, because probably also it's the nationalistic bias. That every time you see the color of our national, of the flag, of course, then you remember home. It defines who we are as a people.
But so all the fountains and waterworks were activated.
Everything was working properly. You know, the kind of KICC that used to work only when we were doing the National Music Festival as primaries, where everything else was running. KICC was back to life, quite fully. Everything at KICC was working. Of course, later on we'll have to talk about the cost that went into it. We'll also be talking about, we'll have to talk about, for example, there was a joke even on social media that tulikuwa tumetoa vyombo za wageni. You know, those electric buses going round and everything else. I made the joke somewhere, and of course the CS didn't take it lightly, because he thought, I launched these things in April. Where are you? Well, we were launching these particular buses in April. So, but then we put up quite a show. Means that we can actually pull up together. I still feel like there's always room for improvement. So, well done, of course, a pat on the back for how we did it. But then Nairobi also, like Governor Sakaja, must keep up. We don't want to have Nairobi clean only when we have got visitors. We don't want to have some things working until you wonder, so this is possible. And then when visitors have gone, so this also is a demonstration on what we can actually do when we want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because looking at the photo, and this photo has been used quite extensively, the photo on the front page of the Daily Nation today, and the position where the President Ruto and all the other heads of state who are there at the very end, as he read out the Nairobi Declaration, is not inside, it's not where we're used to. It's not at the steps where most of the addresses are usually made from, or from the inside auditorium. Yeah. It was actually outside, and this gave a very good view of the KICC and in all its splendor. This is the very first time we're seeing this space used in this way. The
courtyard.
Yes.
I think we are also borrowing from the UN headquarters. A lot of times at the UN headquarters, especially on the east side of the other river on the other end, a lot of times a lot of presses are done on that particular end. This space out here, that's why I say the KICC is a masterpiece, and it's actually underestimated until you
underused.
It's actually underused. When we have got members of parliament here with offices and staff, not so much of what it should actually be doing. So at least for the first time, then you see what Tom Mboya and the other people that actually thought about this when they were building KICC, what really they actually had seen. This is something that is as old as our country. Yet it still makes sense up to date. You realize that even when it was being built, the architectural work that went in, the design work, ensured that a lot of technologies have actually been catching up with this particular building. Yet you don't break up KICC to add on the new technology. It fits in, the service ducts, when you're talking about the lifts and everything else, and even functionality. This is good work, as in work that goes all those years, and this is how it looks like. Okay. You feel like people are putting up new conference facilities now, they still don't look as good as this. That just goes, as in good work can actually outlive generations. And this, we actually have got the founders of this country actually to thank. Okay. So, as much as now the idea to use it and whatever, somebody somewhere in early 60s thought about this. And this is the thing we are using now. 2023, we are still using that. Okay. Yeah.
Definitely congratulations and kudos to the Kenyan government for hosting this event, and for the organizers of the event for actually doing a great job. I'm sure there must be some lessons to be learned as well.
Yeah, accolades to give.
Yes.
Because pulling together 30,000 delegates is a huge and massive operation. Yeah.
And having 19 heads of states within the country for more than one night as well is not...
I know the guys at MFA must be relaxing. They're trying to catch sleep. Yes. It was a nightmare, I think, for guys at MFA.
Okay. Yeah. So, away from the nitty-gritties and the razzmatazz of the KICC, the event at the KICC, of course, there's what was discussed there, and the Daily Nation goes with what Africa wants. And the Standard gives you the figure directly, 3.9 trillion shillings on the table for climate work. President William Ruto managed to get pledges worth $26 billion during the Africa Climate Summit, with a promise to push for a financing deal from multilateral lenders and have big polluters pay fair share of crisis. The issue of money, and this is where it concerns many of us, that once we start talking about big figures like this, we always have a problem. We remember talking about the COVID billions, and what happened with that. Yesterday, the cartoons on both the Standard and the Daily Nation made reference to the same, that the big fat cats and other fat corruption cartels are now happy that we are talking about big money. Do you get that feeling that we are looking at a scandal in the making in the next few months?
Actually, climate financing has been a scandal, not in the making. It's actually It's an active crime as we speak. If you look at how people who are getting a lot of these carbon capitation and everything around, how they are getting, you then find money listed elsewhere. Long time ago when I used to work within the NGO world, you go out looking for grants and how it works out. Then you stumble on projects that are listed to having been done and the figures attached to them. Then you have never seen them. They might actually be within the same space. For example, if you're in the youth space like where I used to work then, you realize, when did somebody do this particular project, this particular year? And they had a lot of money. And it's documented. Yes. It's actually documented as a success story from very reputable organizations. But then you don't find it on the ground. There's been money coming in. A trickle, yes, from what is actually being demanded, but it's still huge money in our numbers. But then how is it being given to people? You realize that somebody has got a farm somewhere in the north, somewhere in Samburu, is not a Kenyan most likely. Somehow the way it's explained is that then he's giving a safe passage to animals, and then therefore there's a way they calculate, and that is the person who is getting climate change money. So I think we also need to not do what the venture capital has been doing with startups. There are a lot of startups locally here can have all Kenyan names and everything else, but when you actually go and check the people who actually are benefiting, the beneficial owners of actually those startups are not Kenyans, they are not locals. So climate funding also looks a lot like that. Way before we talk about I know the kind of scandal you are looking at, you are thinking about, you are trying to look at it from the Kenyan perspective of entrepreneurship and everything around that. But already climate financing as is scandalous already. International, even locally here, the way it's actually coming in. It's just like only 1% of the money that goes into research on climate in Africa is actually done by locals, people in Africa. A lot of that money is being given to people who are in London, in New York, and other places who are researching about Africa. Okay. So already that is as scandalous as it gets, that people who live here with indigenous knowledge, with the understanding, there's a lot of carryover, cannot get a lot of funding to even further research on this. But the people are getting huge money to do research on Africa. Those are Americans, the people in the West. That in and of itself is not actually correct. So even as we call for equity and everything else, there is the other bit of it that we should not shy away from. We need to talk about the scandal that this already is. And that is what actually makes a lot of people feel like sometimes the call around climate change and everything else, I do not subscribe to that. But then if you look at how skewed the funding is, it looks already like a hoax, and it gives credence to those the theorists, the people who love to create Majitu stories out of everything.
Yes, the president, I think during the earlier stages of the summit, mentioned that he had already released 7.2 billion shillings to the counties. That's through the FLOCA system. And the fact that communities were not aware that this funding has been available for quite some time. It is not a new thing. It means that probably even the funding that has been coming our way on matters climate action, communities are still not aware.
Well, that's why you see, whatever project you are, development communication is an important thing. A lot of these funds do exist. A lot of these facilities are out there. I can see people even in my county at home planting trees, and you know, they're not planting those trees, distributing them and running those programs with their own money, definitely. Somebody is funding it, say the government or there's a partner somewhere doing it. But somehow we don't look at it from that perspective. So I think there is much more education that is needed on this. People really take civic education for a joke, but it's everything. Sometimes the difference between salvation and perishing is simply a little education. So we are focused on other things, but I think there is need for more education on this. Again, there is this emerging elite in that particular sector where you have got the green mafia. A few of them, it's a closed circuit. So you go to an area and you realize there's only one person who knows how to go about these things, is getting all the funding, is the one who's distributing the trees, is the one who's handling the conferences and everything else. So it's also about the rest of us. Looking at how big Nairobi handled this, we should also realize that probably there's a local way of doing it here. So the liberate that particular space.
It probably could be by design and not by default that those people working around matters to do with climate action would actually stand to benefit more by the lack of awareness at the community level. That as long as these people don't know that there's all this, all these benefits do exist, then you can have your way.
I do not want to actually say that is not probably true, but I also know that Kenyans are averse to manual work. And a lot of climate work at the moment, yes, Kenyans are averse. We actually end up with manual work because, for example, it's the last option. Ordinarily, we would actually, all of us want to go to the service industry. And a lot of climate change work at the moment, at least what is happening here, we are not so much at the industrial level where we say there is a lot of emission and therefore we need probably a different type of intervention. So what's happening is tree planting, those programs down there. And a lot of us really, that's why agricultural extension knowledge is not one of those things we, even up to now, knowing too well that agriculture is the backbone to a lot of the economies that the most vulnerable people in this country actually ascribe to. It's not really, today, not a lot of us are actually taking agriculture serious, even though we know that as much as whatever technological progress will be there, food security is key. And the way of actually getting food, we are not going to get food from the laboratory. We will still have to work land. We will till land. So I'm thinking that one of the reasons why a lot of communities and people feel like, okay, they didn't know this much money is here, is because it comes dressed in overalls, it comes dressed in green, something that a lot of us as we go to school, we are looking forward to move away from.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would actually just say that a little bit of education to it around that area would really help. Because as it is, there's a lot of money in that particular sector. A lot of people coming up with innovations that sometimes, like the one I'm telling you, that creating a corridor for animals to cross has got away.
And people
it can actually be,
were not aware, and probably they actually take part in such a...
Yeah, they are part and parcel of that particular ecosystem, but they just don't know that it's been monetized. Just like the way you comment on somebody's socials, on social media, you don't know that he has monetized his account. So as you participate there, you are raising money for them. Okay. So it's a sector that we need to open and realize there is money here, and we are good at chasing money as Kenyans. So good people, there is money here.
There is money, and the Standard has done us justice. 3.9 trillion shillings on the table for climate work, and that's just the beginning. More money could be coming our way, but how much of that and how much of that do you know, or how much of that are you guaranteed will get to you? Well, we're just about to take a break. When we come back, we'll be welcoming Eric Ragalo and Honorable Sunday Oyolo to the panel to continue this discussion a day after the Africa Climate Summit came to an end. What next? Plus, we'll also be looking at some of the political developments in the country, with the ODM party expelling rebel MPs, and whether or not party discipline is achievable, or is it simply a mirage in our situation. You're watching Morning Cafe. Don't go too far. expel 5 rebel MPs from the party yesterday for advancing the interests of rival outfits. The 5 leaders are Game MP Elisha Ochieng Odhiambo, Karoli Omondi of Suba South, Gideon Ochando of Bondo, Felix Odiwuor Kode of Langata, and Kisumu Senator Tom Ojienda. Now, a section of leaders, mainly affiliated to the Kenya Kwanza coalition, have criticized the ODM decision. Today, we are asking, do you support the move by ODM to expel MPs who have gone against the party's stand? On X, you can do that at TV47 News. Give us your feedback there. And on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. Now, we're still in studio with Maliba Arnold Nyajai, public policy analyst, and now joining us on the panel, we have Eric Regalo, political analyst, and Honorable Sunday Oyolo, UDA Kenya Kwanza Western Region Coordinator. Gentlemen, karibu sana. Yes. You missed a huge part of our discussion because we were talking about Kenya's performance in just hosting that big event for 3 days, 30,000 delegates and at least 19 heads of states and government. And the kind of applause that President Ruto is getting, and the organizers in general. But because you came later, let's move on to issues of money. Yeah, and I'm sure you got us at the point when we were talking about just how much money could be coming our way from that discussion. And for the very first time, Kenyans are getting a rough picture of the kind of trillions that we're talking about. Yet communities are still, for the longest time, have remained unaware of what exactly was being canvassed in this climate summits and how they stand to benefit directly. So money to do with climate action and interventions to combat climate change has been there for quite a while. Yet many communities still feel that they don't understand this. And I'll borrow from that video that was viral. The MP from Mumias West, Mumias East, Peter Salasia, when he was talking about some of the interventions. And he was not necessarily wrong or off the mark completely. But what came out is that the general level of awareness of this discussion is wanting in Kenya. And with that knowledge gap, how then will we be able to access this funding or this monies that come our way? Honorable Sunday Oyolo, let's start with you.
Thank you very much, Brother Ndimuli, for having me. I was traveling from Western, just arrived and came to the studio. First of all, we must consider the success of the conference. It was largely successful with the number of delegates. Actually, it was pegged at 10,000 initially, and now grew up into excess of 30,000. And the heads of state that were in town and dignitaries from all over, including the champions of climate change like John Kerry, and it was a very big success. Secondly, when we talk about money, we also must talk about the money that has been in town in the last 4 days or so, and in preparation, the conferencing and what have you, that the expenditure that has been in town, it has really been $1 that we all have been yearning for. Thirdly, when you come to awareness, as it comes closer home, even one of the media personnel actually acknowledged that even the media did not have enough information about what is all this about climate change. And you know now, media being our leading propagator to the public eye and public knowledge, we now are more richer than we were before. So even for Akina Salasia and others, they will have now to get more knowledge. Even the money, and I had my brother Arnold talk about, to it, even the money that is coming, the calculation of the what we call the credit, carbon credit. Even how do they peg, where do they peg, how the pricing. It was a major point of discussion. And Africa having borne much of its brute, we are now being able to know exactly what it is. The civil society that represented us in the conference and what have you, and the youth, and even the assembly of the youth before the main one, are now more richer and now more acknowledged. They know what it is. We are talking about the 23 billion US dollars that is now pledged coming into Africa. But we are also not talking about other activities, like, for example, the pledged Global Center for Adaptation that is coming here. Apart from the UNEP and others, it is being built here. It's going to be the center here in Nairobi, in Kenya, meaning jobs, meaning more access to information and what have you. And this also, we have just seen the 7 billion that the president, is about 7 billion that the president dispersed to the counties. It is going into other activities, including planting of greening, and greening, including even the fruits and what have you. In Western Kenya, for example, we are starting to look at issues of fruits that can earn us money, earn farmers money immediately, like the avocado, the oil trees that are now being adapted in the local. So this conference brought to us a lot of knowledge. It brought to us a lot of conferencing, money into the pocket.
Okay.
And like UDA, we talk about pesa mfukoni. So as we continue these things, most of these conferences, then they bring money to the people, and people get to know that. But I can't.
Just before we come back to Eric, yes, we may be talking about pesa mfukoni, but without proper knowledge on exactly how this money can be accessed and through what activities, very many communities will not benefit. Some of the experts argue that Kenya has been very slow in mainstreaming some of these discussions in our education curriculum. We say that agriculture is a backbone of our economy, yet agriculture is not a compulsory subject taught in schools. It's actually optional. If at all climate change is here with us, and it's something that will be forming a big discussion and the kind of funding that's coming our way, don't you think that by failing to include climate change in our curriculum, then we are failing this generation and the next?
Thank you so much, and sorry for being late. There's a bit of jam around, but that should not be a reason.
Post-summit jam.
Yeah, but that should not be a reason. I'm sorry to viewers. Now that I'm here, let's get talking. I want to go out of the road and say knowledge is there. We've always had knowledge. In Dimuli, when we were young, basically even you and my friend here, Maliba, we used to plant trees. In school, everyone was supposed to come with a tree. And in school, everyone was supposed to take care of that tree until you finish class 8. And at St. George's Primary School in Ruiru here, along the fence just near the gate, I can still see my tree. What happened? So the knowledge of afforestation was already there. What happened? We used to have rivers running Nairobi, 5 major rivers running through Nairobi. We know of the Ruiru River that just starts in Nairobi here. Why is it dry? We know of the Ruaka River, which was huge. I'm talking of rivers that are just around us. Why is it dry? There is Kamiti River that's run along going to Kahawa Sukari down. Then there's the river around us here. What do you call this forest?
Karura.
Karura River. There's a Karura River here. What happened? Everything starts and stops at the administration level. Why did we build in riparian lands? Were there not knowledge there? There were knowledge. What happened? Someone closed their eyes and decided to give the paperwork for someone to finish the riparians. We are being told there are going to be an El Nino end of this month to the start of next month. What will happen with those buildings? People living in those gorovas at the riparian. Were there no knowledge? They were there. It is leadership. Are there no knowledge in America, in China, in big developed countries that they're emitting emissions that are bad? There is knowledge. Are there no knowledge that the nuclear farms destroy environment? There is knowledge. Which other knowledge do we need? Mm-hmm. Which other money do we need? Why are we talking about money when money is not necessary? Do you need money to do such things? You don't need. Knowledge was impacted as we were young. Knowledge has been there, but we decided to kill the knowledge.
So there's the necessity of teaching climate change in schools?
Climate change teaching has always been ongoing. It has always been there. When you are young, you are being told, hata ukijenga boma, usikate ile miti, usikate ile miti. Those are your parents who are telling you. Mm-hmm. They never went to a formal school that me and you have gone to, but they knew you cut down those trees, it's wrong. Was that not knowledge? It was knowledge. So knowledge has been there. It's only that we bury our head and then we come do big conferences in Nairobi. Oh, we've been doing bad. Oh, the world is emitting so much bad things. Oh, and now you can hear, I listened, the big dollar countries have given out big money to manage climate change. But who is destroying that climate change? It's the big dollar countries. Uoni hii ni kuchezewa akili? I mean, the other thing I want to talk about, Dandora dam site here, is that not a wrong one? Do we need knowledge to remove the dam site and recycle it? Did the guy in Kisumu, Governor Nyong'o, did he not do it? How much knowledge did Governor Nyong'o require? He required leadership.
Okay.
I mean, you guys, the last one, please, I talked of river, science and agriculture. Agriculture is science, and science is agriculture. I'm lucky, I live in Nairobi, I don't do much of agriculture, but I did agriculture up to Form 4. I did geography, which geography and agriculture talk of the same thing, river formation, landforms. If someone who did geography will understand what I'm trying to say. But what did we do? We left science and said English must be compulsory. But they killed Luya and said Luya is not compulsory. And if you are in Luya schools in Western and you talk Kiluya, you're given a monto and you're punished because you're speaking your own language. But when you speak English, someone else's language, you look very smart and very knowledgeable. So our kids today cannot even converse a simple Luo, a simple Kikuyu. I'm saying simple because it should not be taught. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Some of this knowledge we are saying that it should be taught, should not be taught. But I'm happy that Kenya has gotten some $1 million, which is going to at least shift the crash of the dollar against the shilling.
Arnold,
that one I'm happy.
Do you see the importance of mainstreaming climate change in the school curriculum?
I'm actually in support of the knowledge because it's important continuously. You know, there's no way you can actually put sunset to knowledge. Also, we have to eternally bring in every generation that comes in must be told who their grandfather was. Why is it necessary? So there's no problem with the knowledge. There's no problem with the summitry. I know he probably is opposed to it because it feels like it's summitpreneurship or conferencepreneurship, which is still good because that is how the economy runs. But be that as it is, first of all, the knowledge bit of it is important. And probably we need to forgive Salasia because he was elected by the people of Mumias East to come and talk about sugarcane. He was not necessarily brought on board to talk about climate change, even though he should know, as a person who went to Egerton University.
To represent the people in all matters, including on climate change.
Well, even on the sugarcane that he's so passionate about, if our temperatures went up a little bit higher, just by 2 degrees, the people in Western will not be able to plant the sugarcane they're doing today. So he should know that ordinarily. I know it's just the bad manners that we have with our leaders that you just get an invitation and you show up. There is a lot of bad manners, like you're coming on set here, you didn't prepare. You've been invited. So the guy knew too well that he was going to, he actually was coming out of that particular session. Again, coherence. That will actually speak to what he was actually saying, that sometimes being coherent in a language makes you look like you are smarter. But then we cannot look down upon language, because communication is at the heart of everything. Mm-hmm. We are human beings because of communication. If you did away with communication, we are wild animals. The only difference between we people and other wild animals is that we are storytelling animals. Storytelling is communication. So even when we meet in Nairobi, when there's a summit in Nairobi, that is storytelling. We are telling the story, our now story. You cannot find zebras actually coming from Masai Mara and then going to Amboseli to have a conference to talk about the issues that actually pertain them. That is the difference between us and other animals. So, be that as it is, it's still important to have this knowledge going on. I still feel that agriculture needs to be made compulsory, because the future, there are 4 things that are compulsory for the future. Or rather, the most important sectors in the future are going to be water, because only 1% of all the water on earth is actually good for human consumption, just 1%. Some people actually estimate 0.5% of the water is actually consumable by humans. So water is important. As we go to the future, hydrology, issues to do with water is important. Number 2, food. It doesn't matter when we are flying in planes or whatever we are doing, we will need food. And the way food is not going to come from air, food is not going to come from laboratories. We have tried, but that just doesn't work. We are natural beings. So food is important, and that is where agriculture comes in. Number 3, of course, mobility. Mobility is very, very important. And then energy. Those at least are core. We will be talking about communication later on and other things, but at least those 4 sectors are important. So here, just to actually bring him on board, he spoke about what we have done and everything else. But 75% of global warming and a lot of what we call climate change today, or at least an appendage to climate change, is actually caused by fossil fuels. That is coal, oil, gas, 75% of that. How many vehicles are in Africa? You cannot compare to what is happening elsewhere. That's why they are forcing, we are now talking about electric cars and everything else. The concept of the electric car is not new. It's almost 100 years old. So we are going back to what people tried way before the issue of climate change actually came up. So, but then as a person who aspires one day to become a leader of a nation, I am a little bit conflicted. I wouldn't lie to you. Because I saw Germany the other day bringing down a wind farm. They were bringing down a wind farm.
They did.
And they were not bringing down a wind farm because they wanted to work around something different. They wanted to extend a coal plant. Volkswagen's biggest plant in Germany, I think it's in Stuttgart or something like that, is actually run entirely on coal. South Africa is struggling with energy, blackouts and everything else. Yet their coal is being smuggled to Europe, and they are being told. So as a person who wants to run a country someday, one of those things I know this is very unpopular, but I will tell you this. On the day people make me president, I will ensure that the coal plant in Kitui and Kilifi runs up, so that then people can pay up to 10% of the energy cost. It's important to talk about these things, but I am from a place where what will be important for me as an African president, the most important thing is livelihoods. How do I deal with livelihoods? Either I'm ensuring that you increase the money you put in the pocket, productivity and everything else. China has become affluent. The world is looking for a new factory. These people who are telling us to be greener and everything else are experimenting with us, but they have already done on the other side. So it's not really a fair debate. We know and we accept that it's working out there, that global warming is real. But we also have to acknowledge one thing, that we have got coal in Kitui, we have got coal in Tana River, we have got coal in Kilifi, but we can't use it. Yet, somewhere in Germany, and if you give any Kenyan an opportunity to go to Germany, whether there is coal or not, they will go to Germany, a lot of them.
And listening to you, I think there's a story on page 5 of the Daily Nation today which captures that kind of thinking. Experts dismissing carbon markets initiative. And the premise of this story is that those industrialized nations are simply misusing Africa to justify their pollution of the air, because they can pay Africa to absorb.
Yes.
And that gives them... so Africa is not really offering a solution.
Yes, that's what I was talking about.
We're just
that's exactly what I was talking about.
We're facilitating bad behavior.
It's actually a solution, but is it a fair one to us as a people?
And again, what we must also recognize is that Africa, Kenya, we have more solutions than maybe even in the West in terms of energy. Because like in Kenya right now, we are doing 70 towards 80% alternative energy sources. We have more sun, we have more wind. They don't have that. So we can actually get other solutions other than coal, by the way. Well, they are doing that. Our wind.
Would that have the net effect of them being more industrialized as Africa?
No, it's just that we will end up at the same result. We're having enough power and what have you. What we just need to do, we need to now exhaust our alternatives. We have them. Like, for example, our hydro, we haven't exhausted all we have. Our geothermal, our wind in Loyangalani and other areas. We haven't exhausted that. Like in areas of Turkana and what have you, we haven't. What we are saying is that we don't have to replicate the same thing that they are doing. We can still use our alternatives. The money that we need, and that's where my brother is went wrong a bit. When we talk about the money, we need that money for that research. We need that money for innovation. And we need that money for sustainability, even for the ones that we have started, the projects that we are doing, so that we can be able to sustain them. Okay. And because they are the ones who cost in the whole problem, they should be made to pay. Like, for example, they are
not willing to pay.
They are not. Like, for example, what my brother is talking about, which is true, agriculture. Agriculture needs to be a common subject in all schools. In fact, mandatory subject. Okay. In all schools. But we are saying that even funding our education itself, it's a problem. Why? Because now, instead of them helping us to do that, or that money being used for that, they are giving us short-term solutions like GMO and what have you, and promoting their bad behavior in terms of fertilizer that is ammonized and what have you. Okay. So we should actually be talking about local solutions that are long-lasting, long-term, because now when coal is also exhausted, then what?
I want us to wrap up this discussion. So
I will slightly differ with my brother Sunday, because the leading polluters are not Africans. By the way, we actually are being told that we contribute about 5%, between 2% and 5% of global warming.
That's why we make them.
But you see, that in itself is also not really true, because sometimes if you look at what the Alps is and how Kilimanjaro is, you'll always realize that Kilimanjaro is taller than the Alps. But somehow, the tallest mountain on earth, that's how it goes around. So I differ with him on two aspects. Number one, the cost of putting up a wind farm is exorbitant. There is a reason why China, that is doing very well industrial-wise, and Germany, the biggest industrial power in the West, there is a reason why they are using coal. And the reason is cost. Putting up geothermal wells and everything else, look at the cost. It is prohibitive. Green energy technology is so expensive. See the things they are selling to our mothers in the village. A small TV, 14-inch, is being sold at 75,000. At 20,000, just because it uses some few batteries and everything here. Again, that money, so they are giving with one hand and taking away with the other. So in the name of us actually being part and parcel of one world and a commonwealth that is dealing with global warming, they say they are bringing us money. Look at the cost of the technologies that go into it. And then they have not perfected that. The borders that are using that, it's okay to talk about this. We are not denying that climate change is real. But then I am not a climate activist. So I would look at it. That's why I actually was looking at it from a public policy person, a politician per se. I will tell you 100%. If I were to run for office, I have got Article 43 to deliver. Socioeconomic empowerment, which is the shortest route there. I cannot have coal
and fail to use it,
and have blackouts like is happening in South Africa. That is a failure of politics. It's a failure of leadership, because if these alternatives were easy, why are they not investing them at home? They are bringing down wind farms and extending their own coal farms. Some of the best vehicles that we are using around here, including green ones, are being manufactured using coal. Okay. So until that imbalance is actually taken care of, it's okay to talk about these things, but I will tell you 100% for me, if I were able to ensure that the cost of production in Kenya goes down, at least even by 10%, so that I attract people to bring jobs here, I would do that any day.
Okay.
But
I'll tell you this, and I'm supporting Omaliba on this, and also supporting you on agriculture. Israel, being a member of the armed forces, is a must. It doesn't matter at point in time you leave it, but as a young person, you have to have trained. It's a must because Israel sees it itself as most, let me not use the most hated, but it is in a peculiar condition, a situation wherever it is stated. So it has to protect itself at early age, and everyone in Israel is a semi-military. So how comes then if Kenya, and we were taught that Kenya is an agriculturally dependent country, but again, agriculture is not a must. Mm-hmm. It has to be a must because people have to feed each other. And like Omaliba was saying, there are 5 things that are must. Manufacturing, and I'm supporting him on this. Why? If coal is there, then why should we have a blackout that the one we had 48 to 24 hours? That was wrong. And that is why France, that don't produce its own energy, depends in a small country somewhere in West Africa for uranium. Okay?
Actually, over 70%.
Yes,
France
and
energy.
that country is poor.
It's energy.
Is very poor. But it is one of the wealthiest countries in Africa, but poorest country in terms of GDP. Mm-hmm. Why? My friend is saying we make them to pay. Why is Gabon poor if Gabon is giving France everything? So how is it making them to pay? And who is hurting more? It's Gabon. Because everywhere inachimbwa, the whole country itakuwa ni migodi yote. So what will happen in Gabon? People will be living in handakis. Maybe. And that is what we should be looking at. Then when you look at electricity, I'm saying I supported him. I don't want to return the agriculture. I talked about transportation. We may need those vehicles, but we may not also need them. Is it cheaper to buy a small vehicle that Ruto used to go to KICC? That vehicle is too expensive. And that vehicle cannot carry my whole family. We are Africans. We know how our families are. For Omaliba to buy a vehicle that will carry him, his father, his mother, and his whole community basically, their nuclear family alone looks like a community. I'm not saying I know the way it is, but you know what Africans are talking about. Then he needs a vehicle that will cost over 10 million. But he can buy a smaller vehicle, Kenya. I don't want to create like I'm marketing a vehicle, which is a 7 to 9 seater, that will cost 1.3 million, 1.4 million. Mm-hmm. Then why don't you go for the fuel one?
Okay.
Fossil fuels are still there. Then the only problem with us in Africa is building. As we train and go back to agriculture, then we should also take care of the lands that we build houses. Gatundu here, I'm not going far. Mm-hmm. Ruaka here. Ruaka is red soil. It used to be a plantation, coffee plantation area. Look, go to Ruaka today. You'll be disappointed. Go to all these regions of Kiambu to Gatundu, you'll be disappointed. When we are building, we don't look at what we also are being given. We are also destroying our own. Yeah. That's why I was talking about rivers. Mm-hmm. Our rivers are drying because basically we are not maintaining the environment, we are destroying it.
Okay. Because of time, and I want us to switch to politics that we have to talk about, but because it is a big discussion, let's finish up with it. And on that issue of electric cars and electric motorbikes, it also presents its own challenges as well.
My brother, we must know that actually, as we live, also the world is evolving. The populations are growing, and needs are outstripping the supply in many areas. So innovation is the in thing. And that's why most of our, even what we are talking about, the Kiambu coffee plantations, coffee plantations, it's because of our population the urbanization and what have you. And all those demands right now, that's why we are saying now, watu waanze kurudi nyumbani. Watu waanze kurudi nyumbani. And and that's why we are having like now urbanizing the counties so that Kisumu becomes more attractive for people to also shift back home and what have you. So that the concentration is not. So this innovation has also become very expensive. But by the way, do you realize that there was a time we used to do solar panels in this country? And we used to, it's part of what we are talking about manufacturing. It became expensive, it became what have you. But what we are saying that with this kind of money, for those who have actually caused this problem, to also assist us. I was going to talk about like Baringo. When the lake, Bogoria and what have you, started pushing people in Naivasha, Elementaita, pushing people out of their habitations. The governments, the local government, needs now to be able to resettle these people. This is money that the government doesn't have, our governments don't have because of our budgets or what have you. These guys who have done that, they should be able to be made to pay. And lastly, the case of France. France is a bad case. It's not a reference anywhere. It's a colonization issue. The guys have just misbehaved even way after we gained independence. And it's a case that the UN and other countries just needs to, like that lone fighter, this lady, Dr. Who, the one who was at the AU. She's done that war by herself against France on how France has made it impoverished. And by the way, the fruits of our work is now being seen in what happened in Mali, in Gabon, in Burkina Faso, the new uprising, the new realization that actually France has done. Even Rwanda wanting to delink itself from France is because of this kind of campaigns. Okay. But so France is a bad case. But when we go, like for example, I've visited the Stuttgart farm, and I've gone all the way into the hills, the nuclear, for example. You see, their energy becomes even easier and cheaper with the nuclear plants. But even Germany itself, at some point, could not even maintain it. And the dangers are so vast that they had to cut down on it.
But so, brother, we understand the nuclear plant is important, but do they produce uranium? No. Actually, uranium comes from Congo, and how is Congo? Oh. You see, those are the things we're talking about.
I want us to move on. I just wanted to clear that nuclear energy is one of the cleanest energies. I've actually seen it on the table. It's being presented as a bad thing. It's actually clean energy. But what am I saying? I am actually saying that from a utilitarian perspective, if I were to run this country, I will ensure that our coal does not lie down there when I can employ people through that. And that
there must be innovation to make it clean and safe.
What he's forgetting is that when we talk about innovation, even for clean energy, he wasn't here when I actually said that only 1% of the money that is going into research for clean energy is done by Africans who live here and are experiencing this. All that money, 99% of that money is going to the people in America and the West to research on Africa. So that bias is actually important to talk about. Number two, those guys are not willing to pay equivalent to what they are doing. We have even agreed on how the pricing is done and everything else. Those guys have not achieved that particular threshold. They've actually brought it in terms of loans, and a very small part of it comes in as grants. So the financing bit of it is a problem. That is why, of course, it's a demand here. The innovation is actually skewed. Even at research level, he is a researcher himself. He should know that the people getting a lot of that money, then Sunday will come in as a tier 2, tier 3 person, and he's doing the heavy lifting from the ground. But
I think that's why the president pushed for the global center for adaptation to be based here. So that's a research and
so him as a researcher doing the heavy lifting, he's tier 3 down there. The person who will be quoted and takes away all the money is in New York. And that's why I'm actually saying that I do not know the wisdom with which South Africa decided that they can actually send there, and they were convinced. By the way, climate activists are actually very passionate people. they were convinced that you can actually export your coal and we will help you set up clean energy. What has been happening in South Africa is that they have got their coal leaving the country, it's going to Germany, and they are in darkness. I will tell you this, Fred, freely, that I cannot have coal in Kitui, and I have got about 5 million people who are jobless, whose livelihood, because if I am jobless today, it means that my child is actually going to be a problem and the other one is going to be a problem. So even as we talk about clean energy and climate change, I already have got another problem on my hands. So it's a balance. Okay. But I will actually tell you, we can't go to a place.
After also.
So,
and this conversation is one that will definitely continue. Because even listening to my panelists, I think the confusion will still continue growing.
So putting up a nuclear plant in the coast and western where there's a lot of water,
yes,
is not a hard thing for us to do so that we bring down the cost of production.
Okay.
Using our coal, there's a way Germany is doing using their coal and they still live a quality life. We can use that way. They should not stop us.
The summit has ended. What next? And those are the questions we are asking. And we'll continue asking this question even as our awareness on matters climate change and climate action continues to grow. Yes, Sunday Oyolo says we are now better, we are now richer in terms of knowledge. Let's hope that this knowledge will help us develop our nation in that direction. But it would not be fair for me to allow you gentlemen to leave studio without discussing the other big news, the other big talking point that's there on all the front pages of local dailies. This has to do with the ODM party action. And now we are moving away from matters climate summit, climate change. We've talked about that topic from Monday up until today. We've spent so much time, and hope is that as my panelists agree, that our knowledge will grow and continue in that area. It will be much easier to discuss this issue as we go on. So now let's come back to local politics. And yesterday the ODM party's National Executive Council, the NEC, National Executive Committee, met. It was chaired by the party leader Raila Odinga, and the NEC decided to expel rebel MPs. Some of those people who have been affected by these are Professor Tom Ojienda, Karoli Omondi, Felix Odiwuor, Gideon Ochanda, Elisha Odhiambo. Other members were fined for their participation of failing to adhere or to follow the party's stand, especially in as far as voting for the finance bill is concerned. A number of MCAs too have been affected by this party decision, and they may lose their positions as well. The question we are asking today, gentlemen, is if at all we support this. I've seen quite some criticism on social media, especially coming from the leadership of Kenya Kwanza, that this is not in line with our democracy and other things. But there's that whole issue of political hygiene. It is one of those things being discussed by the National Dialogue Committee at the Bomas of Kenya. We've seen in our history that there was a level of political hygiene, and if at all you defected or you was deemed to have defected to another party, then you had to go back and seek a fresh mandate. Let's start with you, Eric. Do you support this move by the ODM party?
Very, very supportive to it, 100%. As a member of ODM and a life member, that is, when you are a member of a certain party, and for them to run for these tickets, they are life members to this party. You definitely have to run when you're a life member. And you ascribe to the aspirations of the party and the party rules and the party norms. And you sign a document that you're going to subscribe to this going forward. These documents are signed before you even start running. As you present your papers, you actually sign very many documents. My brother has ran, and you also, you understand. All these guys are from a different party and they know what I'm talking about. So what are you signing by the time you're presenting your papers? You're signing to work with the party norms, and you ascribe that your party leader is one that presents your thinkings. So your thinkings, you bring them together to him, and if they become national thinking, he knows how to present them wherever you want to present them. So you don't become a father when your father is still alive. So what did these people do? One, they became a father when the father was still alive. So they did so many wrongs. And for them to leave, it was a long overdue game. Mm-hmm. Secondly, they may find themselves to the cold. If at all the negotiation that is happening right now goes through, one of the issues on the negotiation table is how to handle defectors, and the ruling party going forward will not meddle into other parties. We've seen that happening many years from Moi's time. We saw how Moi played his politics with other parties. Came Kibaki time, Uhuru time, and now. That game has to change. If you are employed basically through a certain party, that is how.
Okay.
Jalango was saying he's representing his people of Langata. And actually, his people are the one who represented him to parliament. How? They voted him in through an ODM ticket. So he was supposed, I'm giving him an example because others are also falling to the same. He was supposed to have followed what his people wanted. His people didn't send him to get in, then move out immediately and ascribe to norms of other parties. Mm-hmm. That was wrong.
Okay.
And they have, I wish we can go back to Debe, mm-hmm, so that we discipline Jalango. Kwanza Jalango is the one I want to discipline thoroughly.
Honorable Sunday Oyolo, are your take on this matter?
I want to discipline him thoroughly.
First of all, I thought we are growing into political maturity. Political maturity is a situation where we work across aisles, across political divide. Once we have a government in place, the government is meant to serve a people across the political divide. There is nowhere Professor Ojenda or Jalango, who is now my MP in Langata, nowhere have they declared that they have defected. All they have been doing is pursuing the good for their people. Mm-hmm. Last time we had a very big meeting of our people of the MPs at South Nyanza, Siaya, and Kisumu MPs and leaders, meeting the ministers, line ministers, because they wanted to have that the Lake Ring infrastructure road done all across, from Busia all the way to South Nyanza to Migori and Homa Bay. That's development. And they were going to discuss with the president of the day. They vote in the budget every day, mm-hmm, and they wanted to. No, none of them has declared that he has the ring road, yes, a long lake ring road. You can Google.
There is no.
Secondly, and it has actually now been budgeted for, and it's ongoing. Secondly, this One Democracy man, ODM party, has been going on for too long. In 2018, Raila just one day walked into Harambee House and came out with a deal. So now in ODM, nobody else should think. Only Raila should think, and Raila should make friends across a political divide. It's not fair.
Okay.
In 1997, I remember when most of us are just after smarting out of a beating by Moi. Well, we were still at Serena with the late Kibaki, the late Ngilu, the late Wamalwa. Raila left us there and went and signed a deal of the merger with Moi. 2002, he left the rest of the guys discussing in Kanu, and I left Nyachae on the table and went into the NAC to sign a deal. 2007, okay, he did the same. We have had the guy do it up to 2018. Fred, if we want to heal this country, we have to start thinking bipartisan. Passaris, for example, is a member of parliament of a cosmopolitan Nairobi. If there is something in that budget for her people, like the housing, the issues of slums and what have you, and he thinks that this will get gotten rid of, that will be in a... Okay. Lastly, waste of time. This thing is a waste of time. Last, it has first of all, we don't have even the commission. So even if people are to be sent to the polls until the commission is live. Okay. Lastly, and again, look at Aisha. Let me just expose that waste of time.
Yes.
Aisha Jumwa, they did the same. The Raila is not learning. Yes. ODM is not learning. Okay. Jumwa
and that's the issue. And that's the issue I want us to discuss with Maliba, because the issue of party discipline is not a new thing.
Yes.
Party indiscipline among members, and we've seen attempts over and over by especially ODM to try and rein in party members to ensure that they actually toe the line, the party line. They've not been successful up until now. But there must be a place for party discipline. There must be a place for hygiene in political parties. Otherwise, that kind of confusion, even in the Houses of Parliament, will not really bear fruit for the Kenyan.
Actually, I just want to start from there. Let's look at the appeal room that exists today. The members who have been affected can go back to ODM for appeal. They must exhaust that particular window. Otherwise, they'll go to the tribunal, which is step 2, and they'll be taken back to the party. I know since it's ODM that is instigating this, they are likely to hasten that process if anybody did an appeal. But at this particular level, these members can appeal back to the party itself. And number 2, this is the tribunal. At the tribunal level, if they don't agree with whatever comes in, whichever party will go to the High Court, then they will move to the Court of Appeal and then to the Supreme Court. So there is still room for appeal. I know a lot of guys are already doing laps, like wife inheritors waiting for somebody to die so that they inherit the wife. Even the Jalango has not, for example, been declared. The only person who can actually declare Jalango seat vacant should be IBC. IBC has not even spoken. We are not yet at that particular level, and guys like him are already doing a lap and saying they are waiting to actually show him a little fear of God. So there's still room for appeal, anybody doing that. But then now there's the bigger question. In the way we do politics today, it's not just entirely about ideology. It's also about policy or what works. If you're finding Pasaris for having voted for this particular, the finance bill, yet Azimio did not have an alternative bill presented in Parliament. Did you expect Pasaris not to vote for it just because the party had said no? 2, there's no consistency. When I talk about consistency here, look at Raila Odinga. He can cross the river, or he can cross the road any day, go to Harambee House, shake hands, without reference to the party or its structures at any particular time. There is nothing in that particular constitution that ODM has that actually exempts the party leader from that particular, from such like scrutiny. So there is no consistency. That it's okay for Raila Odinga to actually shake hands with Moi, it's okay for him to shake hands with Kibaki without referring to the party. It's okay for him to shake hands with Uhuru Kenyatta, and currently he's actively seeking for a handshake with William Ruto. That is okay. But other members are not allowed. So that particular consistency then leads me to one conclusion, that ODM is ripe for an internal revolution. ODM is a good vehicle, but then I think rather than people running away from ODM, there is need for people to stage up a coup within. And we talk about changing our institutions of governance and our institutions of democracy. Political parties are public entities. And if there is any change that is actually going to come to our democracy, it should start from political parties. Now, let me ask this. Is a difference in opinion enmity? Definitely no. If there's going to be this the place of ideology, yes, then there's the place of policy and what is practical and what makes sense. So unless we get to a level where these things can actually be discussed, and democracy in itself, of course, Kenya is rated as a mid-range performing democracy. This democracy should not just be at a place, a party that is so vocal about IEBC and not getting it right. If you were to open ODM servers, for example, for nomination in its strongholds, those are the servers that should be opened. Okay. If you were to ask people in Nyanza, for example, who won the nominations, That is the server that should be opened. You are not opening your own servers at the local level, but you're asking at the national level for servers to be opened.
Okay.
So,
because of time, final comments.
So my final comment on this would be this. It's a question. When Orengo, Governor Wanga, Nyong'o, and others associate with people from the other side, no one punishes them. The other question is this, that all those people who have been expelled have got a common thing about them. They are all from, ethnically, they are lined from Raila's backyard. Other people like Pasaris are being slapped with fines.
Okay.
If Jalango, for example, was not ethnically from what I would refer Raila's backyard, would he have been expelled?
Okay.
Would that happen to Tom Ojienda?
Okay.
So this is boiling to one thing. It's so much about Raila's backyard and very little to do with party discipline and everything else. He's trying to organize his backyard. And that speaks to how he's been running nominations and everything around.
Because of time, Eric, your final comments on this. Just about a minute or so.
My final comment, as a member of ODM and a member of Raila from 2002, because from then we were not ODM then. Party discipline, some of these people, actually all of these people got me there. They met me there. And some have come and left, like Jumwa, okay? So it is about discipline. Follow and toe the line of the party. I'll give you an example of Wamushomba. Wamushomba refused to vote on the finance bill. But she did not, let me finish, it's not your time, but she did not associate with ODM, okay? These other guys associated and even defied party stands, even in votes. The MCAs from Nyanza, they were told, we are voting Omaliba for speaker. Then they decide to vote who? Eric for speaker. Is that, what was the party telling you? It's not dictatorial. There's a difference between dictatorial. Brother, you are not even a member of UDA. You're a member of another party.
Okay, gentlemen.
You are supporting UDA as if you are a member of
Eldoret. Honorable Sunday, you get your final words. We are out of time.
Just in a word.
We are out of time.
Political hygiene is not the same as authoritarianism.
Okay, okay. Point made. Honorable Sunday.
I'm a member of UDA. I'm the coordinator of UDA Kakamega County and Western Kenya. You said, what next? What next is, let's get these people back to Bomas, Shungwa and Kalonzo. And there are very important things to do. We need IEBC in place. We need the demarcation of boundaries. We need the official, this is why we need the official leader of opposition sitting in parliament, because that's where politics are done. Like what my brother Maliba says, that's how we need an alternative political position, so that it's pronounced on the floor of the House. We need the gender alignment. This parliament is illegally established. There are many things that are serious that we need. We don't need this shenanigans and drama of chasing people from parties just because they have expressed their political freedom.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Sunday Oyolo, UDA Kenya Kwanza Western Region Coordinator, Maliba Arnold, public policy analyst, and Eric Regalo, political analyst. The Africa Climate Summit has come to an end. What next? We've got an opportunity to look at what next in as far as climate action is concerned, and now our return to politics. Gentlemen, you'll allow me to go through this editorial comment as we end this session. Now, the need for political hygiene in our houses of parliament, political parties, and leadership in general cannot be emphasized enough. Politics as a discipline is meant to be a principled and ideological pursuit where individuals stand for certain values and beliefs. It is these principles that should guide the electorate in choosing their leaders. However, in Kenya and in many other African countries, we've witnessed a disturbing trend where politicians display an alarming lack of consistency in their beliefs and actions. This lack of consistency has eroded the trust and respect that Kenyans should have for their political leaders, instead of being seen as principled representatives of the people. Many politicians are viewed as opportunistic, only interested in their personal gain and power. The cynicism that has developed over the years has led to a situation where politicians are reduced to mere purveyors of financial incentives during campaigns, rather than champions of ideas and principles. Politics should have some form of structure. It should have some form and structure. It should be guided by principles and ideologies that politicians are committed to upholding. It is a responsibility of political parties to articulate and defend these principles, and it is a duty of the electorate to hold politicians accountable for their actions and beliefs. As citizens, we must also do our part in demanding transparency, accountability, and consistency from our political leaders. We should seek to understand the ideologies that underpin our political system and engage in meaningful conversations about the direction